He does a lot of national TV and radio games. Last Tuesday night, he was in Ohio to do an Ohio Bobcats game, then went to Green Bay to do a Packers-Vikings game, and then last week was here doing the Vikings and Ravens game, and then does a bunch of college games. You're going to what, Auburn this weekend?
Got the Iron Bowl on Saturday.
To do Auburn, Alabama on the radio this weekend, so he's all over the place, 3 to 4 games a week. I'll let him tell you the rest of it. Oh, he was also an intern of mine. Taught him everything he knows.
Wow.
You know.
All right.
It's not going to impress anybody in this room. Adam obviously has a job at ESPN 1000 in Chicago, and that's where I got my start. I was 20 years old. I was a sophomore going into my junior year of college. It was during the summertime, and he was the one who gave me an opportunity. He said, you seem like you know what you're doing a little bit. And I had some experience doing radio in college, and it was something I really wanted to do and something that I became passionate about. But he was the first guy that really gave me a shot at doing stuff. So instead of just getting coffee and burgers and stuff like that for him during our 7 to 11 slot, he actually said, hey, go cut this, go put something together for the intro, go put some sound together. And he actually let me get my hands dirty a little bit in the business itself. So I owe him a lot. He actually gave me a big opportunity, and from there, I was able to build off of that. But I guess I'll start just by kind of telling you a little bit about myself. I'm probably a lot like you guys, grew up around Chicago or in Chicago. I didn't really know I wanted to do this, though, until I got really to college. I had messed around with it a little bit in high school. You know, like everybody else that gets into this business, they say, oh, I wanted to be an athlete, and I sucked. And I really sucked. So that's how it started for me. But I played sports in high school, but I wanted to stick close to it. So when I stopped playing football, they let me do the broadcasts on like the public access station in town. So that was my first taste of broadcasting. And I acted like an idiot on air just because that's, I am an idiot. But I mean, like that's what kind of got my feet wet a little bit. And I said, this is kind of cool. This would be fun to actually pursue on a full-time basis. So I had a buddy of mine who was at Valparaiso University in Indiana, and it's a small school. It doesn't have a real big TV and radio, program or anything like that, but they had a student radio station. And he said, if you want to broadcast, just come here. I'll get you on air right away. And that was my first lesson. Get on air, or get as much experience as you can. If you want to be on air, get on air experience. If you want to be behind the scenes, do everything you possibly can. And that was the first lesson that I learned from him, because if there's a job in front of you, if there's an opportunity in front of you, just say yes. The worst thing you can do, I feel like sometimes, is say no, and I'm almost conditioned, I think a lot of us are in the business, that when we say no, we almost kind of feel sick to our stomachs. It's, there's a job there, the opportunity is there, we don't want to give that up, because if I don't do it, somebody else is gonna swoop in and do it, and I don't want that. I want to do everything I can, get as many opportunities and as much experience as I possibly can. So that was lesson 2. Don't say no. There's gonna be a lot of weird jobs, weird opportunities that come up. Stuff that maybe you're not used to, like doing high school wrestling, or doing a 6th grade basketball tournament. That's some of the stuff that we did when I was in college. We got an opportunity as a radio station to go cover like 6th and 7th graders in a national basketball tournament. We're like, yeah, sign us up for it. That was one of the first things I did in terms of calling basketball. It was a bunch of 12-year-old kids running around. We're treating them like they're in the NBA or something like that. But don't say no to anything. So those are 2 quick lessons I actually got a chance to learn pretty quickly in this business. Like I said, I didn't really know I wanted to do it. When I got into it, I thought it was cool. I became passionate about it. I stuck with it. When I was at the radio station in college, I lived there, basically. I got as much time in there as I possibly could. I constantly worked inside the station. I worked outside of it as a reporter, as a writer for the newspaper, as a play-by-play announcer, as an analyst, even though I don't know how to analyze anything when it comes to sports, at least at that point. As a host, as a producer, anything I could do, I said yes to. And all that experience eventually stacked on top of each other, all those experiences stacked on top of one another, and it seemed like I had enough to go out into the job world and try to get like an actual position. So I was pretty good in college in comparison to other 22-year-olds. I won some awards, that was cool, but you learn very quickly that all that stuff is great, but unless somebody wants to take a chance on you, it's tough. That's where impressions play a big role in this business. You know, I hate having to tell people that it is one of those, it's not what you know, but who you know businesses, but oftentimes it is. It's not as much as you might think, as much as you might hear. I promise, if you're good at this, there is a spot for you. There's way too many jobs out there right now in this landscape of broadcasting, and whether it's on camera, whether it's behind the scenes, there are way too many jobs, there are way too many opportunities for you not to get a shot, as long as, simply put, you're nice and you don't suck. Those are the two things I like. If people say, what's your biggest advice for kids? Say, don't suck and just be nice to people. Like, that's the easiest way to go about it. And there's a lot of branches to those two things, but essentially, in a business like this, in an industry like this, where personal relationships are so important, where everybody knows everybody, this is an inbred business. Every single person has worked with every other person, has worked with every other person. They all know each other. They all talk. It's a gossipy business too, just because it's so tight. It's a small community. It's a very tight-knit group where personal relationships play an extremely important role. So if you say something bad about somebody and you don't think it's going to get around to them, you're wrong. It's going to. It's like, you know, it's like going to high school. It's like being at a small college. That's what it's like. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody talks. So treat people properly. You know, I hear way too many horror stories about guys in my position. And again, I'm young. I'm not jaded or anything like that yet. At least I'd like to think not. Adam will tell you differently. But there are a lot of guys in this business that just don't treat people very well. They get away with it because they're in high-level positions and they make a lot of money and they're valuable to their companies or whatever it is. But I'm not a believer in that. I feel like if you're good to people, they're going to be good to you. There's too many jobs in this business that aren't about you. There's a lot of people that, especially on the TV side, there's a lot of people that go into making the broadcast that you watch on an NFL Sunday, or when you're watching Monday Night Football, or whether you're watching Saturday Night Basketball, or whether you're watching a Major League Baseball game, or whatever it may be, especially on the TV side. There are 50, 100, 200 people, maybe if you're watching the Super Bowl, maybe up to 300 people that are making that broadcast work on TV. So when you're part of that group, that whole group is making it happen. So you should never put yourself above somebody, and don't let somebody treat you as if you're not a valued member of that team. That's something I learned very quickly on the TV side, and I've only been doing it for about 3 years now. But it's a huge team effort, week in, week out, and that's why those personal relationships go a really long way. Making a first impression on somebody is extremely important because you only get one shot at it, and I know that's a cliche, but it really bodes big on this side of the glass, because, like I said, everybody talks to one another, everybody knows each other, and you got to make sure that you treat people properly in this business. You don't want somebody to hear something bad that you said about them. You shouldn't be saying something bad about people anyway. You know, just treat people right in this business. That's the easy part. It's very easy to be nice to people. You got to go out of your way to be a jerk. The other note is not to suck, and the way you don't suck is by getting opportunities. I mean, how old are these guys? Anywhere from, anywhere from, yeah, you got 34. I'm sure there's 18, 19, 20-ish in this room, and it ranges from there to pretty solid. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you guys run the gamut of the age range when it comes to this, and Bill said it at the top. You know, there's people who are considered to be young. I'm probably considered to be young in this business, and if you are 34, some people might think you're crazy for trying to jump into it, but
It's my rebirth.
and you hear stories like that all the time, where it's that type of business. Everybody wants to be a part of it, and everybody wants to be on a live show, or wants to produce a show, or wants to be on air. Everybody wants to do it because it's the best job around. You know, I will say, for as much of a peak and valley business as this is, the peaks are very, very cool to be a part of, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So there's a reason why people want to be in this business, and there's a reason why you guys are in this classroom, and there's a rean whether you're straight out of high school or in college or coming back or whatever it may be, that you want to be a part of it, because it's just a cool job. So when you have opportunities in front of you, don't say no to them. Don't pretend that you're above something. when I got out of college, you know, and I knew Adam pretty well at that point, and I had some connections, but it's a double-edged sword in this business because people don't want to hire you unless you have experience, but you need experience to get hired. So it's, you know, it's a really interesting mix there, and it's so tough to break in sometimes. So it's a big relief when you finally get the shot. Like I said, I was pretty good in college. I had a great resume, all that good stuff, but I didn't get hired for about 6 months outside of college. I graduated in May of '09, and I had an internship. It was a couple $100 a month driving back and forth from Gary, Indiana, to do minor league baseball games. So that was like the first job that I had. But what's that? The Railcats, indeed. Great ballpark. As soon as you step about a mile outside of it, it gets a little bit weird, but it's all good. I mean, that was the best job during the summer. You get to show up to a ballpark every day, call baseball games, then go home. And that was my job for the summer. And that's what gave me like a significant amount of play-by-play experience. If you're really passionate about it, just fire away. Like I said, there's way too many opportunities out there. If you're good enough, there's a spot for you somewhere, okay? And if you're not good enough yet, keep working at it. There will be a spot for you. But I finally got hired in a small town. It was about 3,000 in population, and for somebody from suburban Chicago who spent a lot of time in the city, that's weird. I got the job. I drove 500 miles for the interview. I drove back home. I got the job a week later. I drove 500 miles back out there in 2 days with a car full of stuff, and I took a basement apartment because that's the only place that was available, and it was Iowa. It's like 15 minutes from the Minnesota state line, so it's a ton of snow. It's cold. It's easy to get discouraged in a situation like that. It's Iowa, yeah. That's kind of how I felt about it going in. But I fell in love with the job. I fell in love with the people there. And like I said, it's a relationships business. I'm still friends with the people that I work with to this day. But I got perspective from that job. It made me realize what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. I wanted to call games. I wanted to show up at a big arena or a big stadium, and people are screaming and the game's going on and it's a tight game, and you want to be part of that. And that's what I realized. I wanted to be doing that on a nightly, weekly basis, whatever it may be. So because of that, I figured out that let's focus on that stuff. Let me really try to figure out what I can do to make my career focus solely on that. I called people at the Bears. I called people at the Packers. I called people at the Colts and said, hey, can I shadow your broadcasters? Can I shadow the CBS guys when they come in to do a broadcast? And I went, on my own dime. I drove to Indianapolis and sat at Lucas Oil Field in the CBS booth with a credential that I still have to this day, just holding on to it and hoping that nobody asked me, what the hell are you doing here? Because I didn't know what I was doing there, but I knew I wanted to be a part of it. So I sat there behind Ian Eagle and Jim Nantz and Dan Fouts while these guys called a Colts game or a Bears game or a Packers game and just watched them. So what do these guys do? Why are these guys on air on national TV every week? Why are these guys good at what they do? I still have the notes that I took. Oh, they write stuff down like this. They rehearse this way. They note things this way. They tell stories this way. All that stuff, I absorbed as much of it as I possibly could just by watching these guys. And when I said it's a relationships business, I wasn't kidding. Ian Eagle, who is a phenomenal broadcaster for CBS, if you listen on Thursday night football on radio, he's the one doing the national broadcast for the NFL. When you watch the NCAA tournament during March, he's one of the guys that's in Spokane or Milwaukee or whatever doing one of those huge games and calling one of those upsets. He calls the Brooklyn Nets. He calls the French Open. He does all that stuff. He's one of the most respected guys in the business, and because he was a nice guy and he remembered that people helped him out when he was younger, and he still carries that same attitude to this day, and he's in his 40s now in his 20th year with the Nets and with CBS, he took a liking to me and said, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. He thought it was impressive that I wanted to come to Lambeau Field and drive up to the cold in December to go watch a Packers-Dolphins game and observe. When I had no obligation to do so, I did it under my own initiative. I did it under my own volition and said, I'm going to go up there and just watch. And he was impressed by that. And for whatever reason, he took a liking to me and said, if you need, absolutely. And that's how I got a relationship started with somebody who's way more experienced in this business than I am. And because of that, I sent him my tape. He liked it for whatever reason. And again, I'll never understand why he just decided to say, yeah, send me some more. So I kept sending him once a month. I'd send him another tape. Hey, this is good. Here's what you should work on. Work on this for next time. This is good. This is bad, all that stuff. Any information that you can absorb it. process it. If it fits you, great. If it doesn't fit you, you don't have to necessarily take it, but at least think about it. Anytime that somebody is going to give you some kind of information that may help you, or some advice or a critique, take that into consideration. When I said it was a relationships business, I wasn't kidding, because in January, I get a phone call from a guy in New York who says, hey, Ian Eagle won't shut up about you. He keeps saying great things. He says you have a really good tape. Can you send it to me? Turned out to be a guy in New York who represents Ian. He happened to be an agent. And I never really thought about an agent or anything like that before, and I'm not saying it's a necessity in this business. I'm just saying that a relationship with somebody led to this. And I said, yeah, sure. I sent him my tape, and he said, I see what he's talking about. You got some time in March to meet in Indianapolis. So I drove down to Indianapolis. I went to the Big Ten tournament, and I met this guy who is now my agent. He said, you have potential in this business. I think I can help you. Okay. So when I said it was a relationships business, I wasn't kidding. That became my agent, and that became the guy that I trusted as much as anybody in this business to lead me in the right direction. A couple months later, I went back to New Jersey, started my second season doing baseball, and then when I had an off day, I went up to New York, and I met with him, and he said ESPN called. 2 months later, I got a phone call from ESPN, and I was 24 years old, and I was sitting in a baseball booth in New Jersey, and it was first week of July, and I got a phone call, and he said, ESPN just hired you for 2 years, and you're in. And that was it. That was the phone call. So all these experiences and all these relationships just stacked one on top of another, and that's how I landed here. I didn't expect that. I didn't do a ton of TV. I didn't have a ton of experience, but I was good enough. I made good impressions on people, and I was nice and I didn't suck. So those are the two things, like I said, are pretty important.